That I took this is very recently I had a chance to work with some young talents like who are looking for some internships, and the immediate work was like to say, okay, you know what, I want this project, I want to get this done. It's more like a hackathon mode. Let's just get to work, right? And they were able to do they get the task achieved. They were able to get the task completed, but then what happened after that, like what were we able to do with the code, and was it good enough that we can actually scale it to an enterprise level application? That's where everything started falling apart. So I thought it's probably a nice area to focus on, and then just to you know and especially for this crowd, I thought it's like really really important, really good to have this discussion, and then use the AI tools with caution, right? So about me, a little bit about me. I'm Sathiesh Veer. I have been in the industry for like 16, 17 years now. I specialize in back-end coding microservices, mostly Java and Python background, and I have been working on cloud infrastructures, and recently on say IML solutions, building agentic AI systems for my company, for my things and all that. I'm a principal engineer, and I'm also a co-founder of a startup, and I'm a researcher, a mentor, a technology advisor. Um, and I would be very big use of this vibe coding tools, right? Like I literally do vibe coding, and we'll get to that. And so this is this. I just had this to talk about this, right? So this is a general practice in aviation, right? Like when the pilots they take off a passenger plane, it's generally a practice that both the pilots put their hand on the throttle. If you see like this, right? It's not needed, but it is generally a practice that the pilots follow. And the reason is this, right? The reason is when you cross that particular speed, there is no aborting of the takeoff, and you have to just start keep flying. So they finish all the checklists, they see everything is good, and they want to make sure both of them are aware that they have actually started the takeoff, right? Like they both have to be on the understanding that, okay, you know what, we are doing this, we are flying this plane today. So even though one person pushes this, the other person has the hand on it to say that, okay, you know what, I'm also agreeing to it. I also understand now at this point we both are doing this, and I'm aware of this, right? So this is very very crucial, and I see that is how the Copilot and all the AI tools that we are using for coding today have to be used as, right? So we have to be on the driver's seat. We have to be knowing like what the AI tools are doing for us, right? And let's talk about vibe coding, right? So you, definitely you all would have heard of this term vibe coding, right? And as Andrew talks about this, so this is how he coined this term, right? This is more like, oh, you get into this vibe of doing this, and then you're like excited. You even forget that you're coding, right? You even forget that the code even exists there. So if you look at this post, like what I said, some of the points, right? So I barely touch the keyboard, right? I ask even for the dumbest things, like decrease the padding on the bar or something like that. Not because I don't know how to do, because I'm too lazy to find it and too lazy to do it, right? And then I say, okay, you know what, I accept all. I always just do it because it's anyways getting the things done. And yeah, the code grows beyond the usual comprehension. So after a certain point, like we don't know what the hell is going on there, and you will have to do a lot of reading to understand what the LLM has done. But what do? You just leave it. You don't even do that, right? Like you cannot find a bug. LLM cannot find the bug. It cannot fix its problem that it has created. So like he said, like I just go and keep asking random changes until this issue or the bug goes away, right? And as the last point that said, that's what was quite interesting. Like it's not too bad for a throwaway weekend project, right? So you're building something and you just want to see, yeah, cool, you can trust it, you can let the AI do all the coding, you can just take a back seat and you can just give the commands and let it do the work. But again, that is completely the vibe coding, right? This is okay for certain cases, but not always, right? So what is it good for, right? It's good for a proof of concept. Like I just want to prove something that would work. I just want to see how this thing looks like. I just want to create a UI to test an API that is already existing, right? Or I want to give a demo to someone in a day, and I just want to put something out there so that I can demo this. It's like creating a mock-up that will just work for that one day, not to take real user traffic or something like that, right? A fun weekend project. So all these things is okay, and I have probably created like 3 to 4 projects completely in like one day. It's just spending time on these tools and then saying, okay, now what, this is what the thing is going to look like. Are you okay with this? This is like a small demo. And if you're okay, we can just take this project and then start building it, right? So it had always been for me a prototype builder, right? Like you can just do a prototype that is really, really good to be a prototype, but it is not a real application, right? And what can go wrong, right? Everything when you try to use for a potential enterprise application. If we get into this mode of vibe coding and just literally let the AI do most of the work, everything can go wrong, right? Over a period of time, the code becomes really hard to understand. And even in LinkedIn, I can see so many posts today that people say, oh, you know what, I had to spend days cleaning up the code that AI created to make it at least human readable and comprehensive, or even to comprehend what the hell is going on there, right? So it becomes too hard to understand, and you end up having so much unused code, because when you keep going in the circles of troubleshooting, fixing issues, it tends to go in a different direction and then start creating a new set of files without changing the actual files that needs to be changed. So you have lots of unused code. It's hard to find bugs in that code later, right? And adding features to it becomes really, really challenging, right? Because like you don't have a certain architecture, you don't have a design pattern, you don't have something to follow and then say, okay, now this is how I can add something small into this whole application, right? Even if I have to add a small button, it becomes like a whole project or something that you'll have to do with its own flow, its own set of files, its own set of code that does not align well with the whole project, right? And can you be doing anything long term with this? Right? Yeah, long term in the sense probably maybe a few months the code can run, but then it's going to be a disaster anyways, right? And why does this happen, right? So I was just thinking this, like again, when I was writing this slide, I was thinking like, whenever I start using these tools, there are like two places that I use. I use it in my work. I'll be very cautious at my work. I will not let it do anything. I will just use it more like a chat GPT or a Stack Overflow that is giving me answers. And then when I use for my other projects, for my personal projects, or for my this demos and POCs, I just let it do everything, right? And the reason is this. For me, at least personally, when I look at it, the reasons are too, like the responses are too convincing from the AI model outputs those responses, right? I ask a question and then it is like, yeah, let's do it. This is how you do it. This is how it should be done and all that stuff. It is very assertive. It builds the trust. It makes me feel like, it knows better than I do at that point in what needs to be done, right? And again, it seems comprehensive, it seems thorough. It is like, okay, everything is covered, there's nothing missed out, right? And when you design the plan, like what are all the things that is required. But when you just have a one line question, and when the AI says, okay, this is all needs to be done, there is very easy possibility that we overlook anything that is missing, right? And the tools like are very convincing. It says, okay, know what, now this is the plan, I have this 10-step plans, I'm going to execute one by one, and I'm going to just chunk this out and everything would be done. And slowly and eventually AI is in control, right? And it creates a dependency for me. And that's where the lazy coding thing goes in, that I'm like, you know what, I don't even want to look into a small npm issue. Like, can you look into this, can you just do this? I don't even want to go and troubleshoot this. So like it makes me automatically lazy, right? So this is a couple of screenshots for this project that I was trying to do, just for this demo. I started like, okay, now let's do this chatbot. Let's try to create it with just as a vibe coding exercise, right? So as I said, this is one example where it says, okay, now 8 of 12 to-do tasks are all completed, and I'm thinking for it. And I thought for 1 second, I thought for 1 second, I thought for 2 seconds, and I'm generating the code now. So one side bit is like this. Apple really released a paper recently where they said this AI or the large language models, when they say they are thinking, they're not actually thinking. They are kind of imitating as if they are thinking, right? So it's just a word that shows there saying that, okay, I'm thinking about this. I thought for this, but there is no real thinking there. It's just something that makes us believe that the AI is actually thinking and it is actually comprehending it like similar to a human intelligence, right? So that's how it is very convincing. And then it says, oh, you know what, wow, your MVP is completed. I had a phased out plan. Phase one is completed. All these features are included. Everything is a green check, but you could see there's a bunch of npm errors, right? So this is very common, right? And so before going there, right, I just thought I'll jump into this and then show what I was talking about as a problem statement, right? So I started with this like yesterday. I started, okay, you know what? Let's do a project and then see how this goes for this workshop, right? I went with this one line statement to this cursor, and then I said, you know what? You create the requirement document for me. I'm not even writing a requirement document, right? So I said I want to create a simple AI chatbot, and it should look like ChatGPT or Perplexity. It should have this left nav chats and all that stuff. Write a detailed spec. And this is the spec that it created, right? And probably most of you have seen this if you use this, right? So it says what's the purpose, and highlights and then extracts that information from what I said, just a couple of words. And then it decides who is the target audience. This is something that I never said, but the tool just came up with some target audience, and then it said, okay, these are the key features, and it said it should be modern, responsive chat interface, right? I did not even say it's responsive, but it just picked it up, right? So these are the words that makes me think that, okay, this AI is thorough, right? And this is like, it knows what it is talking about. It is completely, well aware of the situation. And I think like, okay, it thinks better than me. It is covering every single point that I missed to think about. So it is doing a better job than what I could do. So let me just trust it. Let me just let it do what I want to do, right? And it just gave this example, the layout structure, so functional requirements. It's also about authentication, chat interface, all this stuff, right? Like technical architecture, what should be the front end stack, what should be the back end stack, what is the schema, right? All these things, APIs, everything is written here. And again, this is like kind of a couple of iterations. Not everything came in the first go. Like once it starts writing and all these things, now the other point is it made it look like it is comprehensive and thorough, and also it is extensive, right? It's like so much of the content for me to read and then understand and then evaluate. So I'm in a rush, I'm in a hurry to get it done, so I'm saying, you know what, yeah, this on a high level it looks okay. Let's just get started. That is the first step of failure for me, right? So I did not do a thorough review on this. I just looked at it. I said, okay, you know what, this looks okay. Some of the things we can just change it later. That's fine. And then I let it do this, and then I said, you know what, you said create an account. It should always create an account. I don't want to create an account. There should be a guest user facility, right? And then it said, okay, you know what, let me go and add a guest mode there. And then it says, okay, anonymous usage is captured, tokens are calculated, that, this, and all that stuff. So it just went and updated the whole requirements document. Everything was clean. So, and yeah, it is done, and a very clean summary, right? And then I did this. I said, okay, you know what? Now review this from the point of view of a product owner, and look at the requirements, and then say you see anything missing. Well, it said everything is wrong. There's a lot of things that's missing. I'm like, okay, you just wrote this, and you are saying that everything is there is not accurate, and there's lots of gaps and lots of missing. So you did not do a good job. You just said you did a great job, but we did not do a good job. Is that what it is, right? And it says, okay, you know what, the monetization model is missing. You have to do a freemium model, that model, usage limits, and content moderation, admin dashboards, and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, that is true. Like, but probably that's like, phased approaches. Like, can we do it in phases, right? And the moment I say, it says, yeah, you know what, let's do it in phases. And these are all the phased out approach. Phase one, you will have a working product, and that's 1 to 4 weeks. And then you will have a foundation, you will have the core functionality and MVP success. And then you'll go to phase two, which is like polishing, UX improvements. Phase three is monetization. Phase four is advanced features like uploading image and all that. So that phased out approach looks great. The timeline is making no sense to me at this point, because it says, okay, now it will take like a week or 1 to 4 weeks for me to develop this. If I'm using this tool, it is going to take 1 to 4 hours for me, not 1 to 4 weeks. But it is giving the timeline of a regular manual development or what a development team would take, and then saying that this is what the time frame it would take, and this is how the phased approach would be. So yeah, this is trained on the regular SDLC process and how projects work. So it is using that information to say, okay, this is the time frame it is going to take. But you can see the inconsistency or the discrepancy already, right? Like it is saying, okay, you know what, I can just code this in an hour and I can get you everything in there. And then it says it will take 4 weeks for you to get this application running. So already there is like something not aligning well for me, right? The context drift has already started to happen, because The AI thinks the first question is a separate question. That is like, okay, you know what you want to do with this project? Let's get this done. And this is what it takes. And now you ask him for a plan on this project, or this is what the plan is. That's a completely different question, completely different context, and it has a different answer for that, right? So, and I said, okay, you know what? Can you implement the code for the first phase? Test it out and let me know if it runs locally, right? And then comes this thing. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do this different steps. I have like lots of to dos. I thought for this. I create a plan, and then it starts creating all these files, right? It starts creating a folder structure, perfect folder structure, bunch of files, all nice code in there. And yeah, chatbot phase one is completed in like probably a few minutes, right? But then it doesn't run, obviously, right? There is package mismatch issues. There is other issues. So by this time, I'm already lazy, and I'm just like, you know what, like, where are those files? Like, what are the commands? Like, what is the issue? Like, I'm seeing these errors in the console. Can you fix them and all that? So it starts upgrading the packages, and a few iterations goes in, and then it says, okay, you have to update the environment variables. It was able to do it, right? It got something like this. It said, okay, now here is the chatbot, and if you go to your local host, um, probably it is still okay. Maybe I'm logged in. So it did create this very nice looking UI, which I did not expect to be ready in like 10 minutes, right? Or you can try as a guest, you can log in, you can register, and then it also said like why choose our AI chatbot, blah blah blah, all that stuff. I say start chatting. There is this guest session. I say hello. Yeah, there is something going on. I see that hello twice. I don't see a response, but the response is there. It is going to use my Anthropic key, and it is getting the data. Like, and I refresh, I see this. So something is there, something is working, right? But it is not complete. It's not clean. So now, after getting to this point, any issues or anything, if I have to look into it, I'll have to understand this code structure, right? And I'm too lazy to do it, or this is too complex for me. First of all, I'm not a front-end developer, I'm a back-end developer. So to understand this, I need to take time, but I'm in a time crunch, so I want to get this done fast. So I look at this code, and then I'm like, okay, you know what, backend has these files, and then they all look okay. So anything the AI is doing is like trustworthy at this point. So after this point, if you see everything that happens, every issue that comes, this like half of the chat after this is only like fixing bugs on this simple phase one that it completed, right? And every time when I say, oh, you know what, I see this error, it does not stop by giving me an answer, right? I say, oh, you know what, I see something like this on my browser console. What it does is, so this is what it was changing from OpenAI key to Anthropic key, and um, yeah. Yeah, so this is one example, right? I said like, you know what, I'm using OpenAPI key. I mean, you coded it for OpenAPI key. I don't have OpenAPI account. I want to use Anthropic key. I already have that. Is it possible to do it? It just updated the code, and then it ran npm dem and all that. It's saying, okay, there is an problem here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and then I stopped it. I canceled. I'm like, why are you trying to test this code? You changed the code to use Anthropic key, but I did not update the key in the environment file. And without doing that, what is the purpose of testing? And it's anyways going to fail. And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was just testing, everything else is fine. Like, just go out and do this, add this. Okay. I do that. And from that point on, because that again, since I have given like the preferences updated for the cursor tool, in my preferences, it's like, okay, just go and do whatever you want to do. Since I have given this permissions, anytime I say something is not working, like I see these logs, I have this key, but it is still giving me this problem, it just goes, it changes a bunch of code. It doesn't ask me before changing that I'm planning to change this, is it okay? No, it doesn't ask me that. It changes the code, it restarts the application, it just runs some test. I have no clue at this point what it is testing, because everything is curl commands, and everything is like looking into some grepping and then some JSON tokens, and then it says, okay, now what, everything is looking good. But when I start the application and go to the page, all I see is a blank page, right? So there is a there's a clear difference at this point again, that I have no clue what it is writing, what it is testing, and what it confirms as working, because it is not working for me, right? So so that is That is what happens when you give complete control to AI and complete permissions to say, okay, you know what, you just go do it, test it, and then tell me only when it is working, right? um, so yeah, so this is like a command I had to just literally go and say to change the preference, saying that, you know what, follow this instruction all the time, never run this npm server on your own. Because what it ended up doing is I could see like 5 6 different terminal windows open on the cursor. Everywhere it says, okay, kill the previous process and then start this, kill this process and start it. I have so many terminals open. I do not know which one has the current one, which logs are old ones, which logs is not. And I had to go and clean them up and, okay, you know what, stop it, let me run, I will run it, and then I will test it, right? So again, this is this is natural to happen, and this is what happens when we start using the tools as a co-pilot, as a coding assistant, and get into this complete vibe coding where I'm like, you know what, I don't even know what is going on, I don't even care anymore, and then let it do it, right? um, which again is okay for all the small projects that we talked about, but it is going to have its own problems, right? um, so I'll jump back to this presentation, right? So then what to do? Like, if this is not how we should do it, then what do we do different, right? So the basic thing is to follow the 70-30 rule, right? Like, I should be the decision maker at all point. I should be the one to decide like what the tool is doing, and it should be only doing the boilerplate code, right? Like, just saving me some keystrokes, saving me some typing, or saving me some googling for syntaxes and all that kind of stuff. I should still make the decision, right? And when I say decision, I'm saying about low level design and the low level details. Like, for example, I don't even know if this uses Tailwind in the project. It is in React. It was not Next.js. If I wanted Next.js, I should have mentioned it, right? Like, now I let it to choose the framework. I wanted a Firebase database, but it is using a Mongo database now because it said, oh, you can use a Firestore or Mongo in the description. I did not go and change that to say, you know what, this is the database we would be using, because I have a plan to deploy this, say, in Google Cloud, right? And then I wanted to use Firestore, but no, it created it for MongoDB. Yeah, it is easy to change, but again, it is easy for the AI to change, not for me, right? So the low level architectures, including like, okay, you know what, where do you create the base URL? Where is the API.ts? Like, what should be server actions? What should be backend API calls? All this decision should be mine, rather than letting AI decide what it thinks is best or what it knows based on that particular feature that it's implementing, right? Like, when I say, okay, do login, it created a middleware file, and then it said, okay, you know what, this is what auth will happen, right? And why did it do this? Because this is how it is trained, or this is what it learned, right? It learned it to do it this way, so it did it this way. But if I want it to be in a different way, or if I know like this is the certain standard practice to do it, I should specify. I did not mention anywhere like what should be the jot period. So I probably assume that it should have taken like a 15-minute or something. And I'm assuming it should be put on a local storage. I don't want it to be a local storage. I want it to be just a cookie or an authorization header, right? I did not mention those security principles. So those are all assumptions, and everything is what the AI has done now. Now I have to fix each and everything if I have to make this code protection ready, right? And human should be in the loop always. Like, throughout this thing, what I was doing is only just giving the instructions, but I should be in the decision making process in the whole loop, right? And the most important thing is I have to review everything and ask questions. Like, if you saw the very first example that I talked about, right? I asked you to create a technical documentation, and then I asked, like, do you see any problems with this documentation, or it is complete? It said, oh, there are a lot of things that's missing in this documentation. So only if you ask follow-up questions, and only if you try to build that conversation and understand that you and what the AI tool is thinking about are on the same page, then there is always a risk of something going wrong, or something that it is going to do which is not what you want. So asking follow-up questions and reviewing everything, and having that clear alignment on what needs to be done is very, very important, right? And quality over speed. Like, we can get it done fast, but quality is important, because if you are going to do anything with this application after the 2 days or after that one day, then quality is required, right? And it is just a multiplier, not a replacement for me. So I should know what I want this application to do, and AI should not decide what this application should look like, right? And some of the pitfalls to avoid, right? Like, whatever I just showed, no, they're all like the pitfalls that you will have to avoid when we are using these tools, for your regular day-to-day coding, right? The very first thing is don't trust it blindly, right? That's a very um, um, good example of a pitfall to avoid, and it's a very bad thing to do as well, right? Like the moment you give full permissions, there is no way to stop it, right? And unless until you keep monitoring what it is exactly is doing. So as I said, the one of the things, like in one of my previous projects, what I was doing, I was using Claude Code, and Claude Code had complete access to my project. And the moment I said, you know what, I was trying this and it looked like this. Is this how it should be? I thought we should be doing this instead of this, right? So I just gave a question out of an idea, like, you know what, is A better or is B better? It did not think which one is better. It did not give me an answer. It said, you're absolutely right. Yeah, B is better than A. And it went and replaced all the code and then it did everything. I'm like, hold on, I did not ask you to do that. I was just asking a question, is it better or not? But you just replaced it and then diffed everything, right? I'm like, no, 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 don't do it. And it's like, okay, let me go and revert. And it uses the system history and all that stuff to revert it. Now the code doesn't work. Something is broken, right? So do not trust us blindly. That's the very first key thing, right? And again, that's the permissions part is the one. And when you say trust it, right? When it says, yeah, you're absolutely right, that's just the way the LLM models are trained to be nice to users, right? I can be as rude as I want to an LLM. I can just open ChatGPT and I can swear at it. It will be still nice to me, right? I can speak emotional. I can speak hurt. It will be still nice to me. So that's how it is defined and that's how it is trained. So we should not be just trusting blindly based on that, right? And context drift, like what I said, like the questions, if they are completely different, LLMs tend to miss the point that they are all related to the same project, same goal that you're trying to achieve, but the questions are just coming in different angles, right? Some LLMs do a good job at it, and I'm like, when I evaluate these tools, like, oh yeah, Claude Code and Gemini CLI, and when I'm using this Cursor AI, I see that, okay, you know what, there is some tools that is doing something better, something that's not doing, but still it is not 100% complete, right? The context drift happens. So when I go deep into the like when I was working on a Python application, I was going deep into this issue and trying to troubleshoot, and then it just went and said, oh, you know what, okay, this is how we are doing this. It wrote a bunch of code. I'm like, why are you writing all this code? There should be a library to do all these things. We should be just using a library. I said, yeah, you're right. Let me remove all this code. Let me put a library. And when it did that library, it went and changed a version of a different library in the requirements.txt, right? And I'm like, why did you downgrade the Google Cloud or the Gemini agent SDK? And it is like, oh no, the version that I'm using is going to work only with this version of SDK. Okay, but we spent 2 hours just before this problem to fix that SDK version problem. So the SDK is not completely released yet. So there is only one version of that SDK that would work for this project. I spent a couple of hours with this AI tool. I have spent so much time going, opening tickets with Google and all that stuff. And then I found, okay, this is the version I have to pin and then use. And then I pinned that version. And then we have that in the context. I even updated that in the README saying that, okay, this is the version that needs to be used absolutely because of this dependencies, because of this tickets that is open with Google, etc. And then I moved to a different feature. It just went and changed my version, which we said needs to be pinned, right? So that context drift is absolutely tend to happen, right? It is going to happen anytime. So if you don't watch it, if you don't see for that, then it's going to be again a big mess up, right? And this over abstraction trap. So that's something that it does. Like when I ask for a very small thing, it creates like a bunch of classes saying that, okay, now what, this is the interface, this is the class, this is the implementation, this is the structure. I'm like, are all these things required? Like if I use next auth already has something. Like, why am I building another auth framework for this? Like, yeah, you're right. Like, let's remove all these things. The security vulnerability, as I said, right? Like, what is the jar token? What is the key it is? Like, how it is stored? How it is stored in the browser cache? So all these things are some pitfalls that we'll have to avoid, and the skill degradation risk, right? Like the more and more tend to use that, it degrades some skill as well. So what do we do then, right? Like how do we strategically use these AI tools? So there is nothing like this is the solid principles that you have to use, but there are some practices that you can follow, right? Some of those things that has been like working, or some of them have been like better than just letting the tool handle most of the work, right? So the very first thing is clearly defining and documenting the requirements, and that has to be context rich, right? So everything that I say in that document has to tie back to the core goal of what we are trying to achieve, right? So just saying, okay, now what, use this database is okay, but I also want to say, you know what, I'm going to use this database Firestore because I'm going to deploy this into Google Cloud using Cloud Run, using this when I'm ready with my local development, right? And I want to Dockerize this application. So I want to mention that I want to say, you know what, this application can be okay for an npm local development. I can just run this like this, but I want this to be Dockerized. And can you do Docker Compose? Okay, yeah, you can do Docker Compose and then run it as like different images. But I'm going to deploy this into Cloud Run. So I have to follow certain structure of how this Docker image is going to look like. So that has to be there from the very beginning, right? Otherwise, what happens is, yeah, the code works in my local. Now I want to Dockerize it, or there is a bunch of issues. I have to rewrite a bunch of stuff. And then, okay, now I Dockerized it. Now I have to put it into Cloud Run. Or you know what? I have to change a bunch of things. Okay, I did that. Now I want to use Terraform to do this. There is again another bunch of stuff, right? So all these things has to be embedded into this document right from the beginning, and it has to be context rich. It has to give the whole view of this is what we are going to do, and this has to be in the AI context every single time. So it can use this information not to drift a lot and then bring whatever it does related to these things. And again, it is not guaranteed that it will do it. It can always hallucinate, but having this information helps, right? So that's one thing. And again, we'll have to document about the packages, the frameworks, like use Tailwind, use Nextauth, or using Next.js, use what design pattern to follow, like what server actions, as I mentioned, to use, all these things, right? When to use WebSockets, when not to use, and all that. And the other thing is like asking the questions which I mentioned earlier, right? Like when you document something, right? Ask it to explain it back. See if it understood your goal properly, or see if there is a drift even in the very beginning of the understanding. Test its understanding, right? Put it to test, like ask follow-up questions, like trying to break it, like say what is going to happen and all that stuff. So this, the biggest problem that this comes with is, oh, you know what? The more and more questions you ask, the more and more tokens you use, the more and more pricier it is going to be. But that's the reality of it, right? Like you cannot try to just get the best out of it without giving that detailed context, and without training that to your project needs, right? And defining the contracts. So this is one of the things that I did even in this project, like, and even in one of my previous projects. So when I said, okay, you know what, I want to log in. So this is what the login is going to look like, and this is what the message is going to look like. So like as I was showing, this is just sending a message, and the message goes and then comes back, right? So it did not work, and I said, okay, it's not working. What is going wrong? It said, oh, there is a difference in the contract. The API is expecting the model to be passed as an input, but the React component is not passing it. Well, you wrote it, and you wrote it in all in one single stretch. It was not even different stretches, right? But there is still a mismatch. Why? Even though the tool was saying these are all the tasks I am doing, it clearly sorted out saying that there is a 8-step, 10-step process that I'm going to do this one by one. It still created a mismatch in the request and response, or the contract that was between the React component and the API ATS, right? So that was not matching. So the best approach is for me to define them. Like I'll have to define this is what the contract is going to look like, so that I know if I have to switch it, if I have to change it, what is required, right? And I have to define the schemas. Like it created a user schema, right? It created, okay, these are all the fields that is going to be there. Some fields are not even being used. It may be used for advanced features, but it is not there yet, right? So I have to define those schemas, and I have to break this down into smaller pieces or smaller tasks. And when I do this, it is more like I'm having a team of like multiple people, and each of them are working in different components, and how I interact and how I make sure that they are all working together, and end of the day everything is working together, right? So this allows me to have different AI threads. Like the first thread is only on the backend development, the second thread when I go, and then it is only on this thing. So the context is within that. Yeah, these two has to follow, and then I have to manually go and integrate it later, or I have to use a third thread to integrate it. But at least it's not all messed up into the same thread for me to go back and figure out what's happening, right? So doing that step by step. And the planning and execution should not be AIs, right? The AI should not say, okay, this is my plan, I'm going to execute everything one by one. Like we should plan it. I should say, okay, know what, this is your first step. First do this one. Just have a mock endpoint, see if this is working, see this UI things, just the UI thing, check whether the streamed data is showing up. Like, because when I say, how are you here, I see the backend is working, but I don't see the front end working. The message is just appeared and then it's lost in a minute, right? So test that step by step, and then you do the step by step action. You break it down into smaller pieces, and then you control that, right? And always review, right? So everything that AI does, we need to review them. We need to review the code. We need to review the files. We need to review the coding structure. Anything that needs to be fixed then and there. Because the moment we don't do it, it grows, right? It grows beyond comprehension, and it goes beyond the way that we can manage it, right? And this is a prompt that I use extensively, like in certain cases. Like when I ask a question, it just goes in and then starts doing the changes. And like, no, don't do that. Tell me, answer my question first, answer my follow-up questions, because I'm just brainstorming at this point, right? I'm not opening another separate chat GPT window and then brainstorming there, coming up with this design, and then getting into this copilot tool to say, okay, this is what you're going to do. There is a chat window. I'm using this as an interactive mode, and I'm just thinking, okay, let me brainstorm now, try to find some ideas. And the moment I start that, it just goes into coding and then it makes its stuff, right? So don't do that. Answer my questions first. Explain me what you're going to code. Explain me the changes that you're going to do. If I'm okay with that, if I think, okay, what you're going to do is fine, then only do it, right? So that is a good way to put it at check, and then make sure that you don't have to have multiple iterations because of a miscommunication or a misunderstanding or something like that, right? So that's another important thing. And again, the permissions control, right? We will have to control the autonomy that we give to it. So the biggest thing, right, like when I say like the cursor, what we are using now is agentic, right? The moment we say agentic, it is all autonomous, and it takes complete control. It standalone, it operates on its own. But that autonomy, it has to be controlled, especially in coding tools, on what it can do and what it cannot do, and where it has to stop and where it should not, right? Yeah, I want it to run, I want it to test, I want it to just run npm dev, run some curl commands, see everything is working, but only in certain situations. I don't want to do it every time. I'm okay for it to go and change the files directly without even asking me if I'm updating a readme or if I'm updating something else. Sure, but not when I'm touching some core components or the core framework files, right? So I have to have that control. Full permission is like only when you know what you're doing, you have to give the full permissions to the tool. The preferences is something that we'll have to be keep on updating always, right? And yeah, so as I said, yeah, I can hallucinate, yeah, I can mistakes, yeah, I can drift context. All these things are there, but it can also code fast. It can implement established patterns, like whatever is there out there. Like it's like something that you have to copy paste and then change some variables. It can do that very well. It can boost productivity. So trust them as your co-pilot, but do not trust them as your pilot, right? So that's the main key thing. And like you guys, when you're out of college and when you start into coding, like it is natural, like because this is going to be a part of your career as well, right? It is going to be a part of how you learn technology. It's going to be a part of how you do your work. It's not like for others who are in the industry that, okay, you know what, we start coding, we learn in a different way, and then suddenly this tool comes and they're adapting to it. For you, it is going to be a part of your journey from the beginning, right? So having control over this tool right from day one is very, very crucial, right? So that you stay in control of it and you know what you're doing and you learn the technology. You learn both this tool, what it is doing, you learn what mistakes it is doing, you learn how to operate it, and you also at the same time learn the technology, right? You don't just degrade your skill because the AI is able to do faster and it is able to meet the timelines, because that pressure is always going to be there now with from all the companies, all the industries everywhere, right? Like, oh yeah, we have these tools, boost your productivity, get it done fast, get it done fast. Your skills are going to be directly tied to these tools, right? Like how you boost your skills, how you learn the technologies is completely in your control, and you have to take that, right? So with that, that's the end of my talk representation. And if you have any questions, if you guys have any comments, we can talk about them. Okay, I see a question here. Do you see eventually making some developer roles obsolete? how will the roles evolve? So this is thanks for this question. And again, this is a very common question that goes in every day, right? Like, oh yeah, I can replace humans, and the big companies are doing this. The big companies are, okay, you know what? Microsoft laid off 9,000 jobs, and most of them are engineers, right? This is like the second round. Lots of companies, big companies, are laying off engineers because of AI. I see it in both the ways. So one, whatever the mass hiring that happened during the COVID time, that whole bubble, it has to come down at some point in time, right? So that till the economy improves, until the companies have that business, this layoffs and stuff is always going to be there. So that is completely separate. And the AI tools, the hype is definitely there, right? There is a big hype for AI tools. So every company, irrespective of you're a technology company, you're a fintech company, you're hotel industry company, doesn't matter. Every company stakeholders want their teams to use AI and showcase that they are using AI to reduce the cost in some way, right? This is a pressure directly from stakeholders, from shareholders, right? And why that pressure is because this is going too fast, and no one wants to be left behind, right? If a company stays out of this, and if they're completely left behind, it's going to impact the business. So that pressure is there. So all these things together comes in and then makes it look like, okay, you know what, AI can eventually get developer roles obsolete. It may, if we do the mistakes of let AI do everything, right? Like if we don't develop our skills. So our skills are always going to be better than the AI. And I recently read a post that Bill Gates said AI will not replace human coders in like right now or in the next 100 years, right? So there is always this two sides of it. But for us, like we are into this industry, right? Anytime AI does something great, it's a job threat for us. So for us, the important thing is to make sure that our skills are, we develop our skills, we learn the technology, we learn the tools, and we also learn how these tools operate, right? So we know how to use these tools, we know where to control these tools, we don't let these tools go out of control. So I personally don't see that it will make the developer roles obsolete. It might reduce the number of developers, right? It might reduce the interest in engineering and in software development being the number one most catchy profession of all time, like for the past 20 years. I think eventually that might go down. Like people might get into some other field, or some more things, where more human intelligence is required. But I don't think that this is just going to be replacing someone and then people just sitting there saying that, okay, I'm a coder, I don't have a job. I don't think that would happen. So what are some potential ethical concerns around AI generated code? So the whole AI tools, there is this ethical thing that is always there, standards to follow, especially with respect to data, right? Like what kind of data it can do, and what kind of security principles, what kind of ethical principles it can follow. Um, with respect to code, I haven't seen something that is really like a potential ethical concern. Um, so, like for example, again, I'm taking this in the sense like what ethical concerns to the customers could be there. So all the tools, they have their security principles embedded in. Like when you go to Bedrock, AWS Bedrock, Gemini, they have the security policies, and you cannot go and do some prompt engineering, and you cannot do this to break that AI model to do something. So I don't think, especially in the coding, it is having a big ethical, considerations or concerns on that yet. How you seen skill degradation impact developers who really heavy AI tools? Of course, yes. Skill degradation is a problem for people who rely on AI tools, and I have seen that. I have seen people tell me saying that, okay, you know what, I have done this, I tried this, it did not work. So the very first example that I gave about where I worked with a bunch of young engineers, so they completed the task. They said, okay, the task is completed. Here is what it is. See this. I can show you a demo. And then I started asking a bunch of follow-up questions. Right? They were able to answer the questions like what it is doing. Right? When I asked like, can you do this? They were like, yeah, we should be able to do it. And can you do this? They're like, yeah, we should be able to do this. We can try and let you know. And when I asked, okay, how can I do that? Where do I go and make the change? They had no answer for that, because I could see from the code that it had like bunch of README files and everything was created by these AI tools. So they didn't know how I can go and manually make changes into that file at that point in time, right? They are like, we can do it, but we can do only with the help of an AI tool, because the code got to a point where it is in AI's control. Like if I have to do it, I have to spend literally hours to understand what it has done, do a cleanup, and do some documentation, and then from that point I can start taking this up. So yes, if you rely on it heavily, and if you get into that vibe coding model where you don't even care about coding, it will degrade your skill. And do you have a LinkedIn would love to know? Yes, my LinkedIn is here. This is my LinkedIn. Let me share this thing in the chat as well. Um, this is my LinkedIn. And for that question, how can this be a problem to be mitigated? Like for the degradation, skill degradation, as I said earlier, keep learning the technologies, right? Like whatever technology you're working on, it be a front end, back end development, it be a mobile development, or it is testing, anything it is. Ask the AI to talk to you and explain what it is doing, right? And if you don't know, like for example, I don't know front end, which is okay. I asked it to say something, and then it said this is what it is. I take that answer and then I go out. I put it out in a Google. I read a little bit about it. I try to just ask ChatGPT, Claudia, or get some materials. I read about what the answers it gave. Right? It said, okay, you know what? This is how next auth works, and this is how this files are. This is how this authentication model works. I had no clue about it, so I had to read about it. Now I read about like how this model can be integrated with third-party authentication tools. If I want to introduce like sign in with Google, what needs to be done? So once I know that, when I come to this AI and then when I say this, it says something else. I give the link saying that follow this link, use this in your context. Now try to give me an answer. That's when the AI learns and it's like, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, this is one option we can do. Like, no, this should be your first option you should have given me. So the problem to be mitigated is do not trust it blindly, right? Like even though it says very convincingly saying that this is the way to do it, you do your research, right? You have the control. So every decision that is going in should be your decision, right? How best to use it for AI for a hackathon? Yeah, again, so for hackathon, you can use it heavily. But again, so this is how I have seen it, right? Even before AI tools, we had been doing hackathons for years, and we have been able to do this development in 2 days, right? So why was it possible? Because we knew exactly what we were going to do, right? We chose the technologies that we know. I did not go into a hackathon and then start coding in a language that I had never used in my life, right? I exactly know what I want. I know exactly what template to download. I had some templates. I had some things that I can use. So I did what I am very, very well versed with in hackathons before, and I was able to complete that coding in 2 days. Now AI is there, good, but I should still be choosing the tools that I know. I should still be choosing the frameworks that I know. I still should be in a position that even though if I use AI after this, after 2 days, if I look at the project, I should be able to do some changes to it. If I'm doing this for an NGO, right? Like most of the hackathons that I worked on, we do for NGOs, and then they'll be like, okay, end of the hackathon, get this project and make this working for us in production. So I should be able to do that, right? So these projects do have long-term life in some of the hackathons. So just do in the hackathons, do what you know, right? Like let the tool help you, but do not get into something crazy just to see the output. Use your technologies, use what is your strong set, use whatever is something that you are aware of, whatever is in your courses, whatever you have learned, use them, choose those technologies and use AI to do that, right? And one point I did not talk heavily about is this prompting, right? Like if you go and then look into regular internet materials, like how to effectively use this AI tools, right? One of the things would be like how heavily you have to prompt it. So you have to prompt every single time with enough context, with enough information to say, okay, now do this, do that, and exactly do like this, exactly do like that, right? So prompt engineering is a must-have skill today, right? Like we say, okay, let me do persona based. I'll type it like, okay, imagine yourself as a senior engineer, imagine yourself as an architect, and then do it. Does that really work? To some extent, not exactly. Just because I add a word saying that, okay, now you are an expert in front end programming, now answer this question, it doesn't change the answer way completely, right? It's just going to be having that persona touch. Some of it could be again hallucinated as well, so we will have to know what it is talking about. AI knows what it is talking about, but not to the extent or not to the level that we expect it to be. It's not still human intelligent, and the most important thing is when it says it is thinking, it is not thinking, right? Just think that it is trying to fool you. This tool is trying to fool you and then showcase, and it's trying to impress you and prove you. Always criticize it, right? have that as your strategy. Try to see what it is doing, and probably that can help to take control of the things. um, so yeah, that's for the hackathon thing. And yeah, I don't see any other questions, but I just left my LinkedIn in the chat. Feel free to connect. And again, thanks a lot for attending this session. Hope you had found something helpful from this, and we can talk more if you guys always want. We can connect out and talk more. But thanks a lot, and all the best for your hackathon. Right. Thank you, buddy.